Welcome to the next episode of Take a Break.
Take a break. Keep the whole world guessing. Take a break from the human race. Take a break when it gets depressing. Take a break.
Pat Armistead is a voice for all that is joyful. In this series, she brings a fresh approach to emerging consciousness. Through conversational, social and emotional intelligence, she and her guests explore new models of leadership that embrace humour, empathy and compassion.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Take a Break. My name's Pat Armistead and my guest today is Mike Hutcheson, who lives in Auckland, New Zealand, former MD of Saatchi, currently Adjunct Professor at AUT, Auckland University of Technology, and one of his more recent projects, and there have been many in the past, has been creating and delivering an innovation project for entrepreneurs. So we're going to hear a little bit about that today. One thing I was fascinated with when you first began this project was the table of innovation. That delights me still. So Mike, thank you for coming into the conversation today. And I'd like to know perhaps initially what you've been doing while we've been having this break that's been enforced.
Well, it's interesting because, first of all, I should explain that an adjunct professor is a professor without a faculty, which kind of suits me fine because I lost my faculties a long time ago. And so it's enabled me, though, to spend a lot of time reflecting. And so in COVID, because we can't obviously teach in class, although we could briefly, our program is online in any case. And it grew out of a thesis that I wrote about 5 or 6 years ago, called Paradox, why New Zealand culture enables or enhances creativity, yet fails to enable its development. And the insight that I had is that because we're a small country in the bottom right-hand corner of the world, we're quite smart, and it's kind of an Antipodean thing, I guess, the same as in Australia. We're innovative and we're inventive because we have to, because we're a long way away from the rest of the world. So we have to make do. And in this country, we call it the number 8 wire mentality, making do with what little you've got. And so when I started this thesis on the alchemy of creativity in business, I thought it would be a slam dunk. But when I actually drilled down a lot, I found that there are lots of other countries that have much more exemplary records in creativity than we do. Scotland, for example, it was Scott who invented the television set, quite apart from Scotch whisky and golf, the television set, the telephone, rubber tires, and so on. Kiwis invented the egg beater and the corkscrew and the hair clip, and sorry, not the corkscrew, the egg beater and the hair clip. And they, to me, when I looked at it in the great pantheon of inventions around the world, figured they didn't actually rate up there with the Americans putting a man on the moon or a rocket past Jupiter. But what I did find is that in the research I did, that this country is 6th in the world, for example, at authoring high-tech research reports, but only 63rd in the world behind Bulgaria and Senegal at high-tech manufactured output. The insight there, to me, is that we produce smart kids and then lose them. So our most valuable export isn't meat, sheep, all the things that we expect, it's smart kids. And so I thought, well, what we can do is actually think of a way of developing a culture here that enhances and enables creativity and innovation in this country and keeps it here. And so when I did my thesis, I did it partly as a TV documentary and partly as a book. So I call it Paradox, and how New Zealand culture enables creativity yet mitigates against its spread. And it's something about that tall poppy syndrome and so on. But kids leave here because it's just not the money to develop the ideas. And so part of the thinking that we had, and now working with Catherine Newton, I think you know, of course, Catherine. She's remarkable, and she's a teacher, so she's much better. She's the teacher, I'm the preacher, and so we kind of we work in tandem very well. She's very disciplined and well organised, and having been a teacher herself, she knows what to do and get these things across. So we've developed a program, and because I did my thesis partly as a book and partly as a TV documentary, the university asked if we could actually turn it into an e-learning program, which is what we've done. And one of the things that came out of the the thesis was a periodic table of innovation, which you've seen. And really, the periodic table is 80 odd different things you need to do to get an idea off the ground. You start off with your big idea. Is it a business or is it just a product? And if it's just a product, then how do you get a minimal viable product? Then what do you do? First, you've got to do some research, financial, legal, marketing, design, infrastructure, distribution, sales, people and culture, and communication. Those are the kind of the broad headings. And under each of those headings, there's a number of steps that you need to consider. So a table was a great, initially I did it actually as a circle, the circle of innovation. But then when you had to put all the things underneath each of those headings, by the time you got to the centre, the type was so small you couldn't read it. So we had to find a format. And funny enough, I was actually looking for a Christmas present for my grandkids and came across the periodic table of kids' books. There are periodic tables of hundreds of things. I mean, and it's a good meme that you can use because everyone kind of understands it. And so we turned it into this periodic table of innovation and produced it as an app. And the app you can download from the App Store. It's free, and we've optimized it for iPhones and smartphones and tablets, so that you can actually use it. And so the textbook essentially is an app, and under each of those settings, so anyone can go into the App Store or into Google Play and download it. It's just search for practical innovation and entrepreneurship, and it'll come up, and you can download it for free. In fact, what we're doing as of next month is actually taking it and making it available. We think that post-COVID, a lot of people have been displaced. A lot of people have to rethink what they're doing, where they're going. And so it's our intention actually to make the table itself and the app available to everyone in the country for free, because we think that we're going to have to innovate our way out of it. I mean, if they want to do the course, of course, they have to enroll, but just as a thought starter to get them thinking about how do I reinvent myself? Yes. Because a lot of people are going to either be displaced, replaced, made redundant, or just even discombobulated by this whole COVID thing. And I think the lockdown is actually a chance to pause and reflect and think about what you've done. And in a way, I think that the COVID-19 lockdown around the world has been a great cause to actually get people to stop and think. To me, the world is pretty broken anyway, and isn't going in the right direction. And this is a big whack in the side of the head to make us think, well, what's important? A lot of commerce, a lot of business is underpinned by an assumption of continued and continuous growth. That's not going to happen. I mean, there are some countries like Japan, they predict by the turn of this century, in 80 years' time, the Japanese population will actually shrink. And in a shrinking economy, with shrinking consumption, how do you make it go? How do you find a living in an economy that's not predicated on growth? And so I think we're going to have to rethink in quite a deep way the way we live. And hopefully, maybe it's about communities that sing and paint and draw and laugh and do things that don't involve destruction of the landscape or destruction of the environment, and it isn't just unsustainable growth for its own sake, but just enjoyment of good food, of good products, and listen to the bird song. One of the other things I love, we live in Parnell, quite close to the domain, and pretty much every morning I go for a walk around the domain. It's amazing to hear the bird song that's come back now that there's no traffic on the roads. It's just brilliant. And so I mean, and I decided also that I think I'm probably an introvert. I actually like being in this my office here upstairs and our place. The kids call me Prisoner M73.
Yes, you told me.
Yes, so I'm stuck here in this, but I actually quite enjoy it, and I've been really productive. And I've started to write again, and I've started to think again, and because my brain was sort of so taken over by that's all the beta mode where your brain's busy as anything, 13 cycles plus per second, just living, just making some money and doing stuff. And I like being in alpha and theta modes when you're much more relaxed and you've got time to contemplate and put your thoughts together. And I found that writing, columns and articles and posting them on Medium has been really good for me. It's very therapeutic for me to sort of put that stuff down, because if you kind of catalogue your thoughts in that way and put your thoughts down in an essay, 800,000 words, whatever it is, it means you don't make an idiot of yourself at a dinner party when someone asks your opinion or something, because you've actually thought about it and you've put some kind of cohesive structure in your thinking. So
you were sharing with me just before the program your Mikeopoedia.
Oh yes, yeah.
I wonder, can you bring that up again?
Oh yeah,
and show us.
Where is the share screen? There it is.
Yeah.
Can you see it up? Is it up? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of. I just thought, because when occasionally out of the students who come into to class, they'll as you see them come in, you'll see that they're 5'7". They've got brown hair, black eyes, blue eyes, brown hair, blonde hair, whatever it is. And you know that they're there because they're vaguely interested in the subject they're talking about. You might know any prior qualifications. But what you don't know is what their attitude and aptitude is. It's like that thing that they talk about in HR. Above the iceberg, above the water, you see the physical characteristics, their skills, experience. What you don't see is the attitude and aptitude. But even beneath that, or inside that, is what do they know? What are they carrying in their heads? Are they what are they interested in? You might find that one of your students is a very famous or committed kazoo player or something, or a windsurfer, a kite surfer, or a skydiver, or a cartoonist. So there could be any number of things, and it's only when you start seeing that you see them in their real dimensions. You see beyond their characteristics and their attitudes. You see that storehouse of information that we've all got in our heads. And so to me, under the things I thought, just stream of consciousness, excuse me, stream of consciousness I put down under things like science, art, literature, geography, history, sport, health, and so on. Everyone will have a different category, but I just encourage everybody to write down under those different headings. It shows in terms of top of mind consciousness what they're really interested in. And then underneath each of those headings, what kind of art are you interested in? Is it Renaissance art? Is it modern art? Is it comic strips and cartoons? Is it sculpture? Whatever it is. Is it basket weaving? Under science, what interests you? To me, I'm very fascinated with cosmology and quantum mechanics and subatomic particles. How that affects the world. And geography. Where have you been? I mean, that's the other thing too, Pat. I studied the Sri Lankan highlands in geography years and years ago. And then I met up with an American friend when I was leaving Saatchi. When I left advertising, I wrote on a piece of paper. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I wrote on a piece of paper, I want to do well by doing good. And I didn't know what that meant at all. And this friend, Brandon, said, well, have you thought about marketing fair trade tea and coffee? And or fair trade tea initially, and funny enough, in advertising, I'd had a number of tea and coffee clients, Greg's and Bell Tea, which was one part of my portfolio, so I knew about the distribution and advertising for tea and coffee, but I hadn't really thought about fair trade. And he introduced me to a young woman called Sarah Scarborough, an American woman he'd known in Nashville in Tennessee, and she'd come out here to do her master's in sustainable development at the university here. And so we met, and she taught me about what fair trade and organic tea was. And because I'd been interested in Sri Lanka and the Northern Highlands, I knew about the geography and the flora and fauna up there. And so she put me onto a commune in the Highlands called Indulgashina, which was a fair trade community. And so we started importing tea from Indulgashina, packaging it up there, and developing a name. I thought, Sarah Scarborough, that's a good name. And Scarborough Fair, I loved Simon and Garfunkel and the Scarborough Fair Catalogue, and so we called it Scarborough Fair Tea. And it took off. And we were in about 2,500 supermarkets across Australia and New Zealand. In fact, we were the first organic tea and coffee marketing company in this part of the world. And so right across Australasia, we were in these, literally 2,500 supermarkets, and it started to take off. And then, of course, as soon as it took off, Coles and Woolworths thought, oh no, we'll have some of that. And so they took us off the shelves and put their own house brands in, which is a great lesson for me too, that the filler has got the gold makes the rules is the golden rule. And so unless you're actually managing the whole distribution network, and that's why I love the notion of online shopping that sidelines the supermarkets, because they're greedy buggers. And as soon as they see an opportunity that you have pioneered, that's the other thing about being a pioneer. Be very careful about being a pioneer, because all you get is an arrow up your ass. And so that I found that was quite a telling lesson to me to make sure that we had our ducks in a row before we launched anything again. So that was kind of the way in which Scarborough Fair was developed, by linking doing well by doing good with fair trade tea, fair trade and organic tea and coffee, with knowledge of Sri Lanka and knowledge of marketing. And so by joining some dots, we started a company.
That's awesome. So yeah, for the viewers, I know I'm going to start a Mikeopoedia.
well, it's good fun. It's so rewarding. To know what it is that you know. And we should encourage. We should encourage everybody to do it.
Yeah, and I think we underestimate it, and we often don't own how much we know. I think I know for myself, as I've matured, it's like I'm really coming into. Friends say to me, how do you remember all that? Like, how do you know all those stories, and how do you, how do you get that recall? That's another question I wanted to ask you. You've been in this creative zone pretty much all your life. How do you access your own creativity?
Even as a little kid, I've always imagined the inside of my skull to be empty. I don't laugh. And I imagined that I've got a projector at the back of my head, and the inside of my skull is a big white, and there's nothing in there, just a white screen. So I'll just shut my eyes and I'll project something onto the screen in front of me. So I kind of visualize it.
Wow.
And that's, I just close my eyes and go to the movies. It's just my way of thinking about stuff. And the other thing I think was really important to me was, as I was growing up, I was a real nerd when I was growing up, and I could never be. I was never really good at rugby. I played it, of course, and I could run quite fast. And as long as someone put the ball in my hands, I couldn't actually catch. But that's the other thing. If I could catch, pass, kick, tackle, and run, I could have been an All Black. But I can do none of those things, So I figured that I thought, well, what I can do is read. And because my father was a school teacher and he was a headmaster, and he was headmaster for a private school, so to me, holidays were in the school. And I spent all my time in the library, and I just read voraciously. I'd read, there's 2 or 3 books a week, usually non-fiction history, but lots of fiction too. I read the Greek myths, the Arthurian legends.
Yes.
So my head was full of fairy stories and legends, and I think that what you do, and that helps my Mikeopoedia, because I read, and I still read quite voraciously. Usually now in non-fiction, I don't have much time for fiction anymore. But non-fiction, particularly on science and books like Homo Deus and Sapiens that Yuval Noah Harari has written recently. I've just devoured. Richard Feynman, the physicist. Michio Kaku. I'll just pick up anything that looks interesting. I'm currently going through what's the name, Trump's book on our esteemed president, and I'm struggling through it, actually, not because it's not a good read. It's because I'm just appalled by it. And I think, how come that guy got to have his hands on the steering wheel of the biggest car in the world? Just crazy. And that saddens me. It saddens me how ignorant people are. In fact, I just wrote a column about that, and quoted Philip Converse, who wrote some essays in the 1960s about political behaviour and behaviour of electors. And while it was written in America, of course, it applies to all liberal democracies, I think. That only 2% of the population ever actually understand the issues.
Yeah.
Most of us just vote the way we always have because our parents did or our friends and colleagues did. We don't really think about stuff at all. Only about 10% of the population is any ideologically or rationally inclined. Everyone else just votes the way they, in self-interest, how it affects them. So,
before, as I was making a bit of a list for what to ask you today, right, I asked creativity, how do you tap into your own? And underneath that I wrote, is it anything to do with reading a lot? So yeah. I knew you were a good reader, but I didn't know you were going to respond in that fashion. So there's, and that's the thing too, we intuitively know so much and often we don't go with it. So I still love to use a pen or a pencil. For me, especially in the development kind of stage, the keyboard doesn't work anywhere near as good as this. There's something for me with the pen on the page and that flow that comes through me in that place, and then I can come onto here and craft it all up. So you've written a book in your downtime. Tell us about this.
Oh yeah, well I'll share it. See if we can share that with you as well, just so you can. I won't take time to show itself. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Doesn't want to share itself. Basically, it's called, the title is, this is a self-help book, and I've crossed out self-help and put, this is a sort your shit out book. And it's really, it's really about how to reinvent yourself post-COVID. Because I think, as I said before, I think a lot of people are going to be replaced, made redundant, or just have a rethink. This whole COVID thing is forcing us to think differently about the way in which we view the world, and I really believe that it's going to be crucially important that we just reflect on where we're going. And so what I've done, about 10 years ago, I wrote a book with Claire Wadey called Relax and Grow Rich.
Yes, I have that. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Claire was a psychologist, and I borrowed quite a bit out of that as well, because a lot of it was just talking about how do you know yourself and what do you think, and added to that, what does the world look like now? What are the opportunities? What are the big trends in the world? How do we get more creative? How do we rethink what we can do? Because instead of growing bigger and bigger and getting more and more, I think we're going to have to get smaller and smaller and do less and less. As an analogy, I'm a terrible golfer. I mean, I think my trouble is I've got no real coordination. I mean, I'm clumsy, so Matt and I decided that we'd actually invent extreme golf, so that the idea you only have 10 holes rather than 80. 80 is a silly number to have, and it destroys the day. And you can. You have a little V8 golf cart, so you race between the tees as well, and just to make the whole thing exciting. And you can play a joker, so you can race out the middle of the fairway and catch somebody's ball with a baseball mitt and throw it into the rough. I mean, just doing things that that make it a little bit more difficult. Because to me, golfing is about getting better and better. Tighten up this and hold it that way and swing that. I like getting worse and worse at more and more, rather than better and better at less and less. It's just golf for accountants. The people who like being tidy. I don't like being tidy. I like being messy, and so it's all. That's the other thing too, Pat. When you think about creativity, one of the tricks that we use now, which is a metaphor really for discovery or invention, at art school, because I started my career in fine art. So at art school we were taught to do our perspectives. You're taught on a drawing board with a ruler, so your vanishing points go off and and join up at the right place. So you learn to draw a building in the distance by putting your vanishing points down. And when you're on a drawing board with a ruler, finding vanishing points isn't difficult. But when you're actually out in the field on an easel or with a sketch pad, you're doing drawing by freehand or sketching by freehand, and you'll make a mistake, and your brain will correct that mistake, or you won't recognise it. And we were taught to see if our perspectives were correct, to look at our work in a mirror, or upside down between our legs.
Yes.
And when I was slightly less portly, I could do that. And so, and looking at stuff upside down between your legs is a wonderful metaphor for thinking about things differently. So we would check our perspectives by literally bending over and looking at it upside down. And we were taught to draw faces, for example. If you copy from a photograph, turn the photograph upside down. Have you ever looked at a photograph of yourself upside down? You won't recognize it.
Probably not.
Try it. And you learn rules. I mean, you know that when you see a kid drawing a face, the eyes will be at the top of they'll do a circle with eyes up here. But in fact, the distance from the top of your head to the bottom of your head is the same distance. Yeah. Your eyes are actually halfway down your head. And your head is 5 eye widths apart. Your nose is halfway from your eyebrows down to your chin, and so on. So once you know what the mathematics of those things are, you actually get the hang of it, and then it's just practice. So to me, that creativity is a combination of insight, looking at it differently, and visualizing it well and practicing.
Yeah. I just did a 4-week art class out of the Queensland Art Centre and QPAC, and the one of the exercises we did was a mirror exercise, and we were reproducing something that he'd provided, but we had to look at what was not there.
Yeah.
And I hadn't done that work before, so it was like, just be guided. And I was astonished how much light I picked up in this, pretty rudimentary sketch of the mirror image. But the light, it was like, I didn't know there was that much light there, but obviously, clearly I saw it and I could get it. It was just extraordinary, huge mind shift. And even relevant to now, and I'm not sure where that's going to take me, but I am planning an exhibition, so it's going to inform that, I'm sure. And I think the use of metaphor as well. I've always had the capacity to see the good, so to see the light, if you like. And I wrote or made a little meme that said 2020 is the code for perfect vision. It's also the year we opened our eyes. So a lot of creativity for me comes through. If someone says something to me, I can think of a song and I can send them a song, boom, just like that. So, I kind of liken my mind to a bit of a pinball parlor. There's, balls and flippers and lights, but it's all informed. It's all informed, and something I've always wanted to be able to help others do is become fully self-expressed. Like I see you in that light, everything in your Mikeopoedia is an expression of that. But we've become a society that values sport and academia.
Yeah.
Value, creativity, practical intelligence, interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence, etc. Emotional. Yeah. And when you can, and I've kind of fought external input a lot of my life around that. You can't do and be all those things, Pat. How can you be a milliner and a makeup artist and produce film, and you're going to be a speaker and an author, and you've made documentaries. There's but that capacity is within us all in our own unique way.
Yep.
And exploring, I'll get a copy if you send me a cover of your book and some links. I'll put those at the end of the interview for people to go and make reference.
Yeah, cool.
As well as the your book Paradox. Is that available? Can people?
Well, it is on, and it's in Academic Commons. Yeah, it is. I'll send you the link to that too. But it's in Scholarly Commons. You can anybody can access it. Yeah. Yep. So and they'll see the video document, the documentary I made as well. So that was very interesting. And see, that was the other thing too, because I interviewed Kevin Roberts, my old boss at Saatchi, who's the global head of Saatchi's, and George Hector's head of Tourism New Zealand, Philip Mills from the gym guru, Gym Meister. And I asked them all, give me examples of Kiwi creativity. And Kevin told a lovely story. This is a few years ago now, about 5-6 years ago now, in London, in the Saatchi office. They were interviewing interns. They had hundreds of applicants. They got it down to the final 50. And they got the final 50 into a room in Charlotte Street and gave them all a smartphone. And they said, go out and take 3 photographs that will change the world. Come back same time tomorrow. So all these kids rocked off with their smartphones, arrived back in the morning. Said, some great photographs. A Kiwi boy got the job on the spot because he had taken 3 photographs of himself.
Love it.
I mean, that kind of, if you're an American, you wouldn't think of that. If you're British, you certainly wouldn't think of that. Yeah, but there's an antipathy and cheek that we have done this part of the world, which will enable us to do that stuff. Yeah, I'll do that. I can give that a go. And that's why people have trouble to categorize when we go to the States or go to the UK. They have trouble categorizing us because we just get shit done. And it doesn't. We're not intimidated by prestige, power, wealth, anything. There's a kind of an attitude that we can make that happen, and that's why I think the analogy to me for Kiwis at least is we are like hobbits. We're brave little people from the bottom right-hand corner of the world, and we're brave not because we're particularly courageous. We're just too stupid to be scared. We don't. There are no natural predators down here. We're not afraid of anything because there's nothing to be afraid of. Which is both good and bad, because it means we're gullible and get taken in. But in that naive simplicity with which we face the world, we come up with some stuff that no one else in their right mind would think about. And because we're just we're not intimidated. I mean, Pat. I mean, everyone here knows someone who's famous. There's only 2 degrees of separation in this country.
Yes.
And, I've got the Prime Minister's phone number in my phone, and it wouldn't. I mean, if she said, "She'd say, g'day, Hutch," you wouldn't get that in the States. No.
Yes. I've remarked on that since I've come back to Australia. People will say, "Really? Him and her," and it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? It's really, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Mike, thank you so much.
Yeah.
As always, it's a joy, and we should do this more often. I look forward to receiving some links so that people can go and explore some of the things that we talked about. I think that's so valuable. And I'm left, here's what you're leaving me with, the projector in your head and the screen at the front. It's like, that is awesome representation. And you would know of Matt Church.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've signed up to do a portion of his Thought Leaders program, and you create a lot of pink sheets through that process. And so you start harnessing your ideas and put them in a format that is so succinct, right? And I'm capturing what I've, this last 20 years, sometimes found hard to capture. But what I'm really good at is metaphor. It's like every single thing I'm doing, I'm like, oh, I got one for that. So appreciating, our unique journey brings us this unique visual field, and I'm just finding so much freedom in my older age in expressing that now, to be, fully and very comfortably across it. Whereas 20 years ago, I might have been a little bit tentative, at times still kind of responding a bit to external circumstances. And my view is that, this landscape that we're looking out on, it's actually not the truth of who we really are and what we can create. So, I think for all of the listeners, viewers, that get yourself a projector and begin to think that, because then we can, I don't know, when we find our way, we get access.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Dead right. No, dead right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Make it come true. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Take a break.
Thanks for taking a break with Pat Armistead.
Take a break.
Join us next time for more.
Take a break.
And be sure to like, share and subscribe for updates. And don't forget to click the bell for notifications. Bye for now.